It was the most exclusive event of the year. The Grand Prospect Ballroom, filled with New York's elite, glittering for the Vanguard Children's Foundation Gala. The guest of honor, Arthur Vance, a billionaire whose reputation was as cold as the diamonds on his wrist. But in 1 second, the facade cracked. He didn't just stumble, he collapsed. As billionaires and celebrities froze, one person moved. Not a doctor, not his family. A waitress. And what she did next didn't just save his life, it exposed a secret that would destroy them both. The air in the Grand Prospect Ballroom wasn't just air, it was a pressurized mixture of Chanel No. 5, aged whiskey, and the metallic tang of ambition. Chandeliers, great weeping willows of crystal, dripped light onto a sea of black ties and silk gowns. This was the annual Vanguard Children's Foundation Gala, an event where fortunes were pledged and social hierarchies were cemented in stone. From the service corridor, Isabella Bella Rossi watched the spectacle with a familiar, dull ache in her feet and a sharper ache in her heart. She was on her 6th double shift this week for prestige catering, and the silver tray in her hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Each tiny, perfect canapé, a quail egg nestled in truffle aioli, was worth more than her last 3 utility bills. Bella was 26, but some days she felt 46. She was supposed to be a doctor by now. She'd been top of her class, a 3rd-year standout at Johns Hopkins Medical School. Then her father, Marco, had gotten sick. The job loss, the insurance vanishing, the cascade of medical debt that had drowned their family and forced her to trade her scrubs for a starched black and white uniform. Now, instead of learning to save lives, she was serving appetizers to people who wouldn't even look her in the eye. "Table 12, Rossi, and look sharp," her manager, a pinched man named Gregory, hissed as he passed. "Vance is here." Bella's gaze drifted to table 12, the prime piece of real estate near the stage. It was impossible to miss. A gravitational pull centered on one man, Arthur Vance. He was the titan, Vance Global Holdings. He bought and sold companies like other men bought new shoes, leaving shattered livelihoods in his wake. He was rumored to be worth north of 50 billion. Tonight, he was the gala's guest of honor and lead benefactor. He sat rigid in his tuxedo, his face a mask of bored patrician indifference. His silver hair was perfect. His eyes, a cold, piercing blue, scanned the room as if he were calculating its total value. Flanking him were his court. On his right, Serafina Dubois, a model and influencer, less than half his age, dripped in emeralds that matched her dress. She touched his arm constantly, a possessive, manicured hand claiming her territory. On his left sat Julian Vance, Arthur's nephew. Julian was all teeth and slicked back hair, his eyes darting, hungry, watching his uncle with a toxic cocktail of sycophancy and impatience. Bella approached the table, her steps measured. "Canapés," she offered, her voice a polite monotone. Serafina waved a dismissive hand. Julian, however, flashed her a salesman's smile. "Thank you, darling." He took one, and then, sizing her up, took another. "Tough night to be working, isn't it?" Bella just nodded, moving toward the head of the table. "Mr. Vance?" Arthur Vance didn't look up from his phone, which he was scrolling through with an irritable thumb. "No." His voice was like gravel. Bella was about to retract her tray when she noticed something. It was subtle. Under the ballroom's warm, golden light, Arthur Vance's skin was a waxy, unsettling grey. A fine sheen of sweat pebbled on his upper lip, and his hand, the one holding the phone, had a fine, barely perceptible tremor. "Sir?" Bella said, a note of clinical concern creeping into her voice, overriding her waitress protocol. "Are you feeling all right? You look a little pale." Every head at the table snapped toward her. Julian's smile vanished, replaced by a sneer. "Excuse me? Who do you think you are?" Arthur Vance finally lifted his cold blue eyes. They drilled into her. It felt like being inspected by a hostile auditor. "I am perfectly fine. Mind your own business." "He's just tired," Serafina added, her voice a high-pitched defense. "He's been working so hard." Bella felt a flush of humiliation. She'd crossed a line. "My apologies, sir." She retreated, the weight of his stare following her all the way back to the service station. She couldn't shake the image, the pallor, the tremor. It wasn't fatigue. It was something else. Something she'd seen before, in a brightly lit ICU, in a textbook, in her own father's reflection. "Don't stare at the guests, Rossi," Gregory snapped, pulling her from her thoughts. "They're not zoo animals. They're the ones paying your salary." "Right," Bella muttered, grabbing a tray of champagne flutes. "Sorry." The auction began. The auctioneer, a jovial man with a rapid-fire delivery, started the bidding for a week on a private island at 100,000 roses. Bella watched, detached, as hands shot up, as hundreds of thousands of dollars were tossed around like confetti. This was a different species. Finally, it was time for the main event. The Vanguard Foundation's director introduced Arthur Vance to the stage for his keynote speech and the night's culminating pledge. Arthur stood. He adjusted his cuffs. He walked to the podium, the ballroom silent in anticipation. He tapped the microphone. "Thank you," he began, his voice amplified, filling the grand hall. "We are here tonight for the children, a worthy cause." He looked out over the crowd, his gaze impersonal. "But charity is only as good as its return on investment. We invest in these children to ensure a—" He stopped. He blinked, a look of sudden, profound confusion passing over his face. He put a hand to his temple, as if trying to recall a forgotten word. "To ensure." He tried again. His hand moved from his temple to his chest, gripping the lapel of his tuxedo. "Arthur?" Julian called out, a flicker of genuine concern in his voice. Arthur Vance looked down at the podium. He seemed to be looking through it. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Then, with the grace of a felled tree, he pitched sideways, his body crashing to the stage in a sickening, heavy thud. For one long, agonizing second, the ballroom was utterly silent. Then, Serafina Dubois unleashed a glass-shattering scream. The scream ripped through the ballroom's polite veneer, unleashing pure chaos. People surged to their feet, waiters froze, trays clattering. A sea of iPhones instantly emerged, their red recording lights blinking like predatory eyes. "Arthur! Oh my God, Arthur!" Serafina was hysterical, frozen by her table. Julian was the first to the stage, scrambling up, his face a mask of panic. "Get help! Somebody! Call a doctor!" Two of Arthur's personal security men, who had been standing impassively by the wings, swarmed their boss. One, a tall man with an earpiece and a face like granite named Keen, began barking into his wrist. "Code Red! Code Red! Get EMS to the Grand Prospect! Now!" The other guard tried to push Julian back. "Sir, give him air!" "Is he breathing?" Julian yelled, ignoring him. From the service wing, Bella Rossi saw it all. And she wasn't seeing a billionaire. She was seeing a patient. She watched as Keen, the security head, put 2 fingers to Arthur's carotid artery. He shook his head, his face grim. He immediately began chest compressions, but his technique was stiff, hesitant. He was a bodyguard, not a paramedic. "We have a doctor," someone shouted. A man in a tuxedo, Dr. Peterson, who had been at a table near the back, pushed his way through the crowd. He was the event's on-call physician, a semi-retired cosmetic dermatologist who was paid a handsome fee to be present at such high-profile events. "Let me through. I'm a doctor." Peterson bustled onto the stage, looking flustered. He knelt by Arthur, pushing Keane aside. He fumbled for his stethoscope, listened to Arthur's chest for a brief second, and peeled back an eyelid. "He's non-responsive," Peterson announced to the room, his voice shaky. "Pulse is thready and erratic. It looks like a vasovagal syncope, or perhaps a minor myocardial infarction. He just fainted." "He's not breathing," Julian shrieked. "He's gasping," Peterson corrected, though Arthur's movements were more like a fish on a dock. "It's agonal breathing. Someone get me an aspirin, 325 milligrams, and a bottle of water, and get that AED cart over here, just in case." A waiter sprinted off. Bella watched, and a cold, terrible dread filled her. No. She knew what she was seeing. The waxy pallor before the event, the sudden confused stop mid-sentence, the specific rigid way he fell, and now the agonal gasps. "He's wrong," Bella whispered to herself, her heart hammering against her ribs. "It's not a simple MI, it's not syncope, it's VFib. He's in full cardiac arrest." She knew, with chilling certainty, what her father's cardiologists had drilled into her. It was arrhythmogenic cardiomyopathy, a sudden, catastrophic electrical failure of the heart. The aspirin would do nothing. The just-in-case approach to the AED was wasting the only seconds that mattered. The golden window was closing. It wasn't minutes. It was seconds. Dr. Peterson was fumbling, trying to find a good pulse, arguing with Keane about whether to move him. "We shouldn't shock him yet. It could be unstable. Let's wait for the paramedics." "Wait! He'll be dead!" Julian yelled. Bella dropped her tray of empty glasses. The sound was a symphony of destruction, smashing against the marble floor. Every eye in her vicinity turned to her. Her manager, Gregory, looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. "Rossi, what in the hell?" Bella didn't hear him. She was already moving. She ripped off her flimsy catering apron, tossing it to the ground. She darted from the service wing, pushing through the wall of stunned onlookers. She moved like a running back, all shoulders and drive, shoving aside a socialite who shrieked in protest. "Move! Get out of the way!" Bella yelled, her voice raw and completely out of place. She vaulted onto the low-slung stage in one ungraceful, desperate leap, her black and white uniform a stark contrast to the designer gowns. She landed right in the middle of the chaotic circle. "Ma'am, step back!" Keane, the bodyguard, put a heavy hand on her shoulder, ready to throw her off the stage. Julian looked at her, his face contorted in disbelief. "It's the waitress. Get her out of here." Dr. Peterson looked up, incensed. "This is a private medical situation. Security." Bella slapped Keane's hand off her. "Stop," she commanded, her voice ringing with an authority that stunned them all into a half-second pause. She pointed at Dr. Peterson. "You're wrong. He's not having a simple heart attack. He's in ventricular fibrillation, likely from an underlying cardiomyopathy. Look at his jugular venous distension. He's not fainting. He's dying. We don't have time for aspirin. He needs a shock. Now." The stage became a frozen tableau. Bella, the nobody, the waitress, had just publicly and spectacularly contradicted a doctor. Dr. Peterson's face went from flustered to a deep, apoplectic purple. "How dare you!" he sputtered, rising to his knees. "I am a board-certified physician. You are a caterer. You are going to be arrested for this. Keane, remove this woman." Keane grabbed Bella's arm again, his grip like a steel vice. "Ma'am, you are interfering. Step away, or I will remove you by force." "She's insane!" Julian shouted, his voice cracking. "Get her off him!" But Bella didn't fight. She didn't pull. She locked eyes with Keane, the bodyguard, the man trained to assess threats. "Look at him," she yelled, gesturing to Arthur. "He's not just unconscious. He's gone. His skin is blue. Those aren't breaths. He's dying right now. She then turned her white-hot gaze back to Dr. Peterson. What's his O2 saturation? What's his rhythm? You don't even know. You're waiting for an aspirin while his brain is starving of oxygen. She jabbed a finger back at Keane. You've done CPR. You feel that? Under your hand. That's not a pulse. That's just disorganized chaos. You wait for the paramedics. You're just going to be handing them a corpse. You let me help. He has a chance. In that moment, Arthur Vance's body gave a final, rattling gasp, and then went profoundly still. The horrifying, absolute stillness of death. That's what broke the spell. Keane looked from Bella's face, blazing with terrifying, absolute certainty, to Dr. Peterson, who was now just standing there, mouth agape, holding a useless stethoscope. Keane made a choice. It was a choice that would end his career if he was wrong. He released Bella's arm. "The AED," he growled. "Where is it?" "By the bar," a waiter yelled. "Get it!" Bella screamed, not waiting. She sprinted past them, leaping off the stage. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. She saw the red AED cart being wheeled slowly by a panicked-looking hotel manager. "Give me that!" Bella snarled, ripping the cart from his hands. She spun it around and raced back to the stage, shoving it up onto the platform with a grunt. She flipped the latch and opened the case. Keane was already back on Arthur's chest, performing compressions, but this time with a brutal, desperate force. "Stop compressions," Bella ordered. She grabbed a pair of trauma shears from the AED's side pocket and did what she'd only ever done on a medical dummy. She grabbed the front of Arthur Vance's $10,000 bespoke tuxedo shirt and ripped it open, buttons flying like shrapnel. "Clear the chest," she yelled. She tore open the pad packets. "I am lodging a formal complaint," Dr. Peterson shrieked from the edge of the stage. "You have no right. This is assault." "Shut up!" Bella snapped, not even looking at him. "He's wet. Wipe his chest." Keane, breathing heavily, grabbed a napkin from a nearby table setting and roughly wiped the sweat from Arthur's skin. Bella slapped the first pad on the upper right side of his chest and the second on the lower left, just as she'd been trained. The machine, a Phillips heart start, whirred to life. An automated voice filled the silent ballroom, analyzing, "Do not touch the patient." Bella, Keane, and even Julian froze, their hands hovering. The seconds stretched. The entire ballroom held its breath. "Shock advised," the machine stated, its voice calm and terrifying. Bella's breath hitched. She was right. V-fib. "Get back," she commanded. She looked at Keane, at Julian. "Clear!" Dr. Peterson lunged forward. "Don't! You don't know his history. You could induce asystole. You'll kill him." Bella didn't hesitate. She pressed the flashing orange button. "Bizizit!" Arthur Vance's entire body arched off the floor in a violent, convulsive jolt. It was a horrible, unnatural movement. Serafina screamed again, a short, strangled sound before someone finally pulled her away. Arthur's body slammed back onto the stage. He was still blue, still dead. "Start compressions," Bella yelled at Keane, who immediately resumed, counting under his breath. "You killed him," Julian whispered, his face white. "Oh my God, you killed him." "Shut up and bag him," Bella snapped. "Where's the ambu bag in this kit?" She found it, slapped the mask over Arthur's face. "Tilt his head back, chin lift. Good. Now, one breath every 6 seconds. Go." Keane compressed. Bella bagged. They worked, a grim, 2-person machine in the center of a glittering party. 30 compressions. 2 breaths. 30 compressions. 2 breaths. "Analyzing." The machine's voice cut in again after 2 minutes. "Do not touch the patient." They pulled back, panting. The silence was heavier this time. "No shock advised," the machine announced. "Continue CPR." "No." Bella whispered. That was bad. That could mean asystole, flatline. But as she reached to restart compressions, Keane, who was closest, suddenly said, "Wait, wait." He put 2 fingers on Arthur's neck. His eyes went wide. "I have a pulse," he said, his voice cracking with disbelief. "It's weak, but it's regular. I have a pulse." Bella shoved his hand aside and checked for herself. Thready, fast. But it was there. Spinatonous circulation. At that exact moment, the doors of the ballroom burst open, and a team of FDNY paramedics stormed in, their gurney clattering loudly on the marble. "What do we have?" the lead paramedic shouted. Dr. Peterson immediately tried to take charge. "Patient is a 62-year-old male. Witnessed collapse, I believe." Bella cut him off, standing up, her hands shaking, her uniform splattered with sweat. "Patient is Arthur Vance. Witnessed collapse. Agonal breathing. 1 shock delivered via AED for VFib. Regained spontaneous circulation approximately 30 seconds ago. He needs O2, an IV, and a full 12 lead. Fast. I suspect severe cardiomyopathy." The lead paramedic took in the scene. The ripped shirt, the AED pads, the pale-faced waitress who spoke like a chief resident, and the flustered doctor. He didn't waste a second. He pointed at Bella. "You, keep bagging him. Let's get him on the monitor." As the team swarmed Arthur, stabilizing him, loading him onto the gurney, Bella continued to work, her mind blissfully, wonderfully blank. She was just a machine. Squeeze, release, squeeze, release. They were wheeling him out of the ballroom, a controlled stampede. As they passed the stage, Arthur Vance's eyes fluttered open. They were cloudy, confused. But for one brief, indelible moment, they locked onto Bella's. He saw the waitress, the woman in the cheap uniform, holding the bag that was breathing for him. He didn't understand, and then he was gone. The gurney was out the door. The paramedics were gone. The ballroom was left in stunned, total silence. Bella stood alone on the stage, the ambu bag still in her hand. The adrenaline began to recede, and her entire body started to shake violently. The silence was broken by a single, cold voice. It was Julian Vance. His face was no longer panicked. It was a mask of pure, cold rage. "You're done," he hissed at Bella. "You're fired, and I'm not letting you leave this building until the police get here. I'm having you arrested for assault, battery, and practicing medicine without a license. You're going to prison." The transition from hero to pariah was immediate. The moment Julian's words cut through the silence, Bella was no longer a savior. She was a liability. The crowd, which had been watching in stunned awe, now murmured, their expressions shifting to suspicion. Gregory, her catering manager, stormed the stage, his face ashen. "Rossi, give me your badge. You're finished. You are so finished." "But I saved him," Bella stammered, the adrenaline draining away, leaving her hollow and trembling. "You assaulted a guest," Julian snarled. "A doctor told you to stop. You heard him. We all heard him." He pointed at Dr. Peterson, who was now straightening his tuxedo, puffing himself up with renewed indignation. "She acted recklessly and against my direct medical advice," Peterson declared loudly to the room. "Whatever happens to Mr. Vance now, it's on her." "Keane," Julian ordered, "take her to the security office. Don't let her talk to anyone." Keane, the bodyguard, looked at Bella. His face was unreadable. He had helped her. He had trusted her. But now, his boss's nephew was giving him a direct order. He nodded curtly. "This way, Mum." Bella, feeling utterly numb, didn't resist. She let Keane lead her off the stage, past the staring, whispering faces. She was escorted through the service corridors, down a flight of stairs, and into a windowless, beige-painted security office in the basement of the Grand Prospect. "Sit," Keane said. He didn't sound angry. He just sounded tired. He closed the door, leaving her alone on a hard plastic chair under a flickering fluorescent light. The next 2 hours were a blur of humiliating interrogation. First, the hotel's head of security. Then, 2 NYPD officers. They took her statement. She told them the truth. "I'm a third-year medical student on leave from Johns Hopkins. I recognized the symptoms. He was in V-fib. Dr. Peterson was wrong." The older cop just sighed. "Johns Hopkins, huh? And you're working as a waitress. Look, kid, you've got Julian Vance and a doctor on record saying you assaulted his uncle. You're lucky Mr. Vance's personal security is handling this internally. For now. Don't leave town." They left. Gregory came in, threw her final paycheck on the table, and told her she was blacklisted from every high-end catering company in New York. She was finally released, spat out onto a cold, dark Manhattan street at 2 a.m. Her uniform was torn. Her hair was a mess. She didn't have enough money for a cab. She walked the 40 blocks home to her tiny apartment, the city's noise a dull roar compared to the ringing in her ears. She had saved a man's life, and in doing so, had destroyed her own. Meanwhile, 60 blocks north at the Mount Sinai Presbyterian Hospital, the scene was one of controlled panic. Arthur Vance had been rushed directly to the cardiac catheterization zone. His new doctor, Dr. Lena Hansen, was the head of cardiac critical care. She was a woman in her 50s with 0 patience for egos and a reputation for brilliance. She watched the monitor as they performed an emergency echocardiogram. "My God," she whispered. "Look at that, the right ventricle. It's dilated. Walls are like paper. This is classic ARVC, arrhythmogenic right ventricular cardiomyopathy. It's a miracle he's not anoxic." Julian and a pale, quiet Serafina were in the family waiting room. Dr. Hansen walked in, stripping off her gloves. "He's stable," she said bluntly, and Julian sagged in relief. "But I want to be perfectly clear. He did not faint. He was in full cardiac arrest. Whoever was on that stage with him saved his life." The initial shock from that AED, that was the only thing that could have brought him back. Another 60 seconds, and we would be having a very different conversation. Julian's face went rigid. "Doctor, there was a waitress." She interfered. "She used the machine against the advice of the event doctor, Dr. Peterson." Dr. Hansen's eyes narrowed. "Dr. Peterson? The dermatologist? What was his diagnosis?" "He said it was a minor heart attack. He wanted to give him aspirin," Julian said. Dr. Hansen let out a short, sharp laugh, devoid of humor. "An aspirin? Good God. Giving an aspirin for this would be like trying to put out a house fire with a water pistol. It's irrelevant. This waitress, she correctly diagnosed V-fib in the field and applied a shock. Did you get her name?" "Isabella Rossi," Julian said, his voice tight. "She's been detained for her recklessness." Dr. Hansen stared at him. "Mr. Vance, let me be clear. Your uncle is alive because of that reckless waitress. Dr. Peterson's protocol would have killed him. You need to thank her. She's a hero." Dr. Hansen turned and walked away, leaving Julian standing alone in the sterile, white hallway, his face a complex mask of fury and calculation. A few hours later, in the penthouse ICU suite, Arthur Vance was awake. He was weak, disoriented, and tethered to a dozen machines that beeped and hissed around him. But his cold blue eyes were alert. Keane stood at the foot of his bed. "Tell me," Arthur rasped, his throat raw from the intubation. "You had a severe cardiac event, sir. Genetic, they're saying. You were gone. We were at the gala. I remember the speech," Arthur whispered. Then, nothing, I remember. A face. A woman. Yelling. Keane took a deep breath. That was Isabella Rossi, sir, a waitress from the catering staff. He then recounted the entire event, every detail. Dr. Peterson's fumbling, Bella's sudden, violent intervention, her defiance, her diagnosis, the shock, the return of his pulse. He finished by telling him what Dr. Hanson had said. She saved your life, sir. No question. Arthur was silent for a full minute, processing. He, Arthur Vance, owed his life to a waitress. And Julian? Arthur asked. He had her detained, sir. He's planning to press charges. Arthur's eyes, even in his weakened state, flashed with a familiar, cold fire. Find her, he ordered Keane, his voice a gravelly command. Get her. Bring her here, now, and tell my nephew he is not to do anything until he speaks to me. Keane nodded. Yes, sir. He was already dialing his phone as he left the room, a small, grim smile playing on his lips. Bella was asleep on her lumpy sofa, still in her dirty uniform, when her phone buzzed on the floor. She ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. A persistent, demanding vibration. She groaned, rolling over, and fumbled for it. An unknown number. What? She mumbled, her voice thick with sleep and despair. Is this Isabella Rossi? The voice was deep, formal. Who's this? My name is Keane. I'm the head of security for Arthur Vance. Mr. Vance has requested to see you at Mount Sinai Presbyterian. I can have a car for you in 10 minutes. Bella shot upright, suddenly, painfully awake, her heart hammered. See me? Is he okay? Am I still being arrested? He is stable, and no, you are not being arrested, Keane said. Mr. Vance wishes to speak with you. 10 minutes. The line clicked dead. Bella stared at the phone. This was it. The reckoning. Maybe Julian had been overruled. Maybe she was getting an apology. Or maybe, she thought cynically, they were going to offer her hush money to avoid a lawsuit. She showered in 3 minutes, threw on her only respectable outfit, a pair of black slacks and a faded blue blouse, and was waiting on the curb when a black, sleek Cadillac Escalade pulled up. Keane was in the passenger seat. He didn't speak, just nodded for her to get in. The ride to the hospital was silent and tense. Bella's mind raced. What was she going to say to the man whose life she'd saved? What was he going to say? They bypassed the main entrance, taking a private elevator to the penthouse Vanguard wing, a wing Arthur Vance had, ironically, funded. Keane led her to a private suite guarded by 2 more men in suits. He knocked, opened the door, and ushered her inside. The room was vast, looking more like a luxury hotel than a hospital, and in the center, in a high-tech bed, was Arthur Vance. He looked smaller without his tuxedo, his skin still pale, but his eyes were just as intense. Julian Vance was standing by the window, on the phone. When he saw Bella, his face twisted into a mask of pure venom. She's here, he spat into the phone and hung up. Uncle Arthur, I really must protest, Julian began, striding forward. This woman is a dangerous, unstable opportunist. Julian. Arthur's voice was quiet, but it cut through his nephew's tirade like a razor. Shut up and get out. Julian stopped, stunned. What? Uncle, I said get out, Arthur repeated, his eyes not leaving Bella's. I want to speak to Miss Rossi, alone. Julian looked from Arthur to Bella, his humiliation palpable. He gave Bella a look that promised murder, then turned on his heel and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. Now, it was just the 2 of them. The silence was heavy, broken only by the quiet beeping of the heart monitor. Miss Rossi, Arthur said. His voice was a dry rasp. Mr. Vance, Bella replied, forcing her own voice to stay steady. She stood stiffly by the door. Keane told me what you did. The doctors told me what you did." He paused, as if the words were difficult. "You saved my life." "I did what anyone with my training would have done," Bella said coolly. "My event doctor did not," Arthur countered. "My nephew tried to have you thrown in jail. My security man. He trusted you. Why?" "Because I was right," Bella said simply. "And Dr. Peterson was wrong. You were in cardiac arrest. He was going to let you die." Arthur stared at her. This young woman in a worn-out blouse who spoke to him with no fear, only a chilling, exhausted certainty. "You said, Johns Hopkins. You're a medical student?" "I was," Bella corrected him. "I had to drop out. 3rd year." "Why?" The question hung in the air. This was the part she hadn't told the cops, the part that was none of his business. "Family issues," she said evasively. Arthur Vance hadn't built a global empire by accepting evasive answers. He pressed. "What issues?" Bella felt a sudden, sharp spike of anger. He was here, in his 20,000 a night hospital suite, and he was interrogating her. "My father got sick," she said, her voice dropping, getting hard. "He had a condition, a heart condition. He lost his job. He lost his insurance. We lost everything. He died. I had to drop out to pay the medical debts." Arthur's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. "I see. And this knowledge, how you knew what to do. It was from your father's illness?" "Yes," Bella said, her throat tight. "I sat through 3 years of cardiology appointments. I read every paper. I knew every symptom. What I saw on that stage, it was my father. All over again. Only this time I knew enough to stop it." Arthur was quiet for a long time. The beeping of the monitor seemed to get louder. "My team is thorough, Ms. Rossi," he said finally, his voice taking on a new, colder tone. "I had them run a background check on you, on your family, on your father, Marco Rossi." Bella's blood ran cold. "What?" "Marco Rossi," Arthur continued, his eyes locked on hers, unblinking. "He was a lead engineer at a company called Apex Medical Solutions." Bella felt the floor drop out from under her. She couldn't breathe. How do you know that?" "Because," Arthur Vance said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. 3 years ago, Vance Global Holdings initiated a hostile takeover of Apex Medical Solutions. I ordered it myself. We stripped it for its patents and dissolved the R&D department to streamline operations." He didn't need to finish. Bella did it for him, her voice a hoarse, shaking whisper. "You. It was you. Your father was part of the restructuring," Arthur stated, as if reading a financial report. "He was laid off. His insurance was terminated." The room spun. Bella grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. The man she had just saved, the life she had pulled back from the brink. He was the one. He was the man who had signed the paper that had signed her father's death warrant. "You killed him," she whispered, the realization a physical blow. I saved the man who killed my father." The revelation hung in the air, thick and toxic. Bella's legs gave out, and she sank into the visitor's chair, her mind a roaring void. She stared at Arthur Vance, the man in the bed, the architect of her family's destruction. You knew," she stammered, the pieces clicking into place. "When you called me here, you already knew." "I've known for 4 hours," Arthur confirmed. His voice was still flat, but a new, weary-heavy emotion was creeping in. The report was on the tablet by his bed. "Rossi, Marco, terminated. Apex Medical Solutions, subsidiary of VGH, deceased, cause of death, complications from arrhythmogenic cardiomyopathy, the same." You sit there." Bella's voice was low, trembling with a rage so profound it made her sick. "In a hospital wing you paid for, with the best doctors in the world, and you tell me you streamlined my father's life. You structured him into a grave." She stood up, pacing like a caged animal. "Do you have any idea what that means? He died in a county hospital. He waited 14 hours in an ER. They didn't have his records. They didn't have the specialists. He died, confused, and in pain, and terrified. I was holding his hand when he flatlined, and they didn't have an AED cart that worked. They... She choked on a sob, her anger so white-hot it was burning her from the inside out. "And I saved you." The irony was so bitter, so profoundly cruel, it was almost comical. She let out a hysterical, broken laugh. "God, I saved you. I should have let you die on that stage. I should have let Dr. Peterson give you that aspirin." "Perhaps," Arthur said quietly. His simple agreement stopped her cold. She expected denial, excuses, corporate non-apologies. She did not expect agreement. She looked at him. For the first time, the mask of the billionaire was gone. He didn't look cold or powerful. He just looked like an old sick man, dwarfed by his machines. "It's a remarkable thing," he mused, his gaze distant, fixed on the New York skyline out his window. "I've spent my entire life building an empire on the principle of cause and effect, action and consequence. I buy a company, the stock of its rival falls. I fire a CEO, the board realigns. It's all numbers." He turned his eyes back to her. They were clear, but haunted. I've never had to look at the consequence. Not like this. Not when it was wearing a waitress uniform and holding the pods to my chest. "Don't you dare try to make this some poetic life lesson," Bella spat. "This isn't a lesson. This is my life, the one you broke. You don't get to find redemption here." "I'm not looking for redemption, Ms. Rossi," Arthur said, his voice regaining a sliver of its old command. "I am a man who pays his debts, and it seems I have an extraordinary one that can't be paid with a simple check." He motioned to the tablet. "I read the file. I know your student loan balance to the dollar. I know the mortgage on your mother's apartment. I know the cost of a full medical degree at Johns Hopkins, plus a living stipend, plus a fellowship." Bella froze. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you're not going to be a waitress anymore. You're going back to school. As of this morning, a trust has been formed. Your entire education is paid for. Your family's debts are cleared." Bella stared at him, speechless. It was blood money. It was everything she needed. "No," she said, the word tearing out of her. Arthur raised an eyebrow. "No? It's what you want. It's what you deserve." "I won't take your money," Bella said, her voice shaking with conviction. "I won't let you buy your conscience clear with my father's memory. I won't let you restructure my grief." "This isn't for my conscience," Arthur said, his voice hard as steel. "This is a transaction. You're a brilliant medical mind. What you did, it was an anomaly. It was incredible. It is a waste for you to be serving champagne. I am not making amends for your father. I am correcting a market inefficiency. You don't belong in catering. You belong in an operating room." He was reframing it. Not as an apology, but as an investment. The only language he truly understood. "I can't," Bella whispered, but the fight was going out of her. He was right. She wanted it. She wanted her life back more than she wanted her pride. "There's a second part to the offer," Arthur continued. "I am seeding a new foundation, the Marco Rossi Foundation for Cardiomyopathy Research. Its initial endowment will be $500 million. Bella's knees truly buckled this time. What? It will be dedicated to funding research and providing care for patients with ARVC and related conditions, specifically providing grants to those who, like your father, fall through the cracks of the insurance system. He looked at her, his expression grim. It's your father's legacy, but it needs a director, someone with the knowledge, the passion, and the personal stake. It needs you, not as a student, but as the head of its board. You'll run it. After you get your MD, of course. Bella couldn't speak. It was impossible. It was a checkmate. He wasn't just giving her a future, he was giving her a chance to rewrite her father's ending for thousands of other people. He was offering her the one thing she craved more than an apology: justice. Why? She finally managed to ask. Why do all this? Arthur Vance looked away, toward the machines that were keeping him alive. Because on that stage, I was your father. I was the one in the county hospital. I was the one without hope. And you were the doctor I needed. The one he deserved. He looked back at her. I am giving you a pen, Ms. Rossi. A chance to write a different ending to his story. Do not let your pride, or your hatred of me, stop you from taking it. Before she could answer, the door to the suite burst open. It was Julian Vance, his face livid. He wasn't alone. He had 2 men with him in expensive suits, and he was waving a sheaf of papers. It's done, Julian announced, a triumphant, ugly smile on his face. The petition for conservatorship is filed. Uncle Arthur, you are clearly not in your right mind. You're giving away the company. You've been declared medically incompetent. And as for you, he turned, pointing a trembling finger at Bella. You opportunist. You're not getting 1 cent. I'm the one in charge now, and you're trespassing. Security. Bella watched, stunned, as Julian's 2 companions, lawyers clearly, fanned out in the room, adopting postures of smug authority. Julian himself was vibrating with a manic energy, his eyes wide and triumphant. Julian, you son of a bitch! Arthur rasped from the bed, trying to sit up, but a fresh wave of arrhythmia alarms chimed from his monitor, and he fell back, wincing. Don't exert yourself, Uncle, Julian said, his voice dripping with false concern. You're very, very sick. You've just had a major trauma. You're not thinking clearly. You're trying to give $500 million to a waitress. He strode over to Bella, his face inches from hers. You thought you'd hit the jackpot, didn't you? Find a confused old man, play the hero, and bleed him dry. You're a parasite. Julian, that's enough. The voice wasn't Arthur's. It was Keen's. The bodyguard had entered the room silently behind Julian, and he now stood by the door, his arms crossed. You don't give me orders, Keen, Julian snapped. You work for me now. I'm the acting CEO of Vance Global, pending the board's confirmation. And my first order is to have this gold digger removed from the premises. And fire him, he added, gesturing at Keen. Keen didn't budge. He just looked at his boss in the bed. Mr. Vance, your orders? Get him out, Arthur whispered, his face pale with fury. You can't, Julian laughed. I have the paperwork. He's not competent. The petition has been filed, Mr. Vance, one of the lawyers interjected smoothly. It has not been granted. There will be a competency hearing. It's a formality, Julian insisted. Perhaps, a new voice said. Dr. Lena Hansen, the cardiologist, walked into the room. She held a tablet in her hand and looked at Julian as if he were something she'd found on her shoe. Dr. Hansen, thank goodness, Julian said, changing tactics. This woman is stressing my uncle. He's had a hallucination. He's trying to change his will. Mr. Vance is on a mild sedative. Dr. Hanson said, her voice clipping. But he is perfectly lucid. His cognitive function is unimpaired. In fact, we just ran a full neurological workup an hour ago when he mentioned you might try something like this. Julian's smile faltered. What? Dr. Hanson held up her tablet. Mr. Vance is medically, and in my professional opinion, legally competent. His petition, she said the word with disgust, will be dead on arrival. And as his physician, I am ordering all non-essential personnel and non-family to leave this room. That includes his lawyers. She turned to Julian. And you are severely stressing my patient. Get out. You can't. Julian's entire demeanor crumpled. The bluster, the triumph, it all evaporated, leaving behind a pathetic, desperate man. He's destroying the company. He's destroying my legacy. You have no legacy, Julian, Arthur said, his voice stronger now. You have only my name, and you've just proven you are not fit to carry it. Julian looked around, trapped. He saw Bella watching him with quiet, cold eyes. He saw Keane, who looked ready to physically throw him out. He saw Dr. Hanson, who was already on her phone, likely calling security. He deflated. With a final, venomous look at Bella, he turned. This isn't over, he whispered, and then he and his lawyers slunk out of the room. The silence that returned was heavy, but clean. Dr. Hanson checked Arthur's vitals. Your pressure spiked, but you're stable. I'm serious, Arthur. You need rest. No more family drama. Just 1 more minute, Doctor, Arthur said. Please. Dr. Hanson looked at Bella, then at Arthur. She sighed. 1 minute. She left, leaving the door slightly ajar. Bella and Arthur were alone again. The high-stakes drama had dissipated, leaving only the raw, painful truth they had uncovered before. He's right about one thing, Bella said quietly, her voice trembling. I am an opportunist. You offered me that foundation, my father's name, and my first thought wasn't no. It was, yes, I hate you. I hate you for what you did. But God, I want what you are offering. Good, Arthur said. That's the woman I want running it. Not a saint, a fighter, someone who knows the value of what was lost. He fumbled for the tablet by his bed. My lawyers are faster than his. The papers are drawn up. The Marco Rossi Foundation is already chartered. The funds are already in escrow. Julian can't touch it. It's done. Bella sank into the chair. It was real. So what now? She whispered. Now, Arthur said. You leave. You go to Baltimore. You re-enroll. You become the doctor you were meant to be. You run my foundation. You save lives. You do the one thing my money on its own cannot. And you? She asked. I recover, he said. And I will have to find a new successor. He let out a dry, pained chuckle. And I will try to live a life worthy of the one you saved. Bella stood up. She walked to his bed. She looked down at him, this complicated, terrible, and now, strangely, redemptive man. She felt a toxic brew of emotions, anger, gratitude, grief, and a strange, profound pity. She didn't thank him. She couldn't. My father, she said, her voice firm, was a good man. He deserved better. Yes, Arthur said, and for the first time, he looked her directly in the eye, and she saw it. Not pity, not guilt, just acknowledgement. He did. Bella held his gaze for a long moment. Then, without another word, she turned and walked out of the room, out of the hospital, and into the sunlight of her new, impossibly complicated life. The fallout from the gala collapse was immediate and spectacular. Julian Vance, in a final, desperate act of spite, leaked his version of the story to the press. The Page 6 headline was screaming, "Billionaire's Brawl, Vance collapses. Nephew claims Waitress turned Svengali is extorting ailing tycoon. The article painted Bella as a conniving grifter, a disgraced med student who had assaulted Arthur on stage and was now manipulating a sick old man into giving her $500 million. It mentioned her father's routine layoff and framed the new foundation as a transparent shakedown. For 24 hours, Bella was the most notorious woman in America. Her apartment was surrounded by paparazzi. Her social media was a sewer of accusations. But Julian had miscalculated. He had forgotten about the other witnesses. The New York Times published its own story the next day. The headline was different. "The Angel in the Apron: How a Waitress's Medical Training Saved Arthur Vance." The article featured 2 key interviews. The first was from Dr. Lena Hansen, who stated on the record, "Ms. Rossi's intervention was not reckless, it was medically flawless. She performed an accurate field diagnosis under extreme pressure that the event's own physician missed. She didn't just save his life, she saved his brain. She is, without a doubt, a hero." The second interview was from Keene, Mr. Vance's head of security. "I've been in high-stress situations for 20 years. I saw Dr. Peterson fumbling, and I saw Ms. Rossi, who had total, unflinching certainty. I made the call to trust her. It was the best call of my career." The Times story also, crucially, printed the full name of the new foundation, the Marco Rossi Foundation for Cardiomyopathy Research. The narrative shifted instantly. Bella wasn't an extortionist. She was a grieving daughter who had, in a twist of karmic fate, saved the man responsible for her father's ruin. The Page 6 story was quickly dismissed as sour grapes from a disinherited nephew. Julian Vance was finished. At an emergency board meeting for Vance Global Holdings, Arthur Vance, appearing via video link from his hospital room, looking gaunt but composed, called for a vote of no confidence in his nephew. It was unanimous. Julian was stripped of his title and his board seat, escorted from the building by security. Arthur, true to his word, named a competent, long-serving COO as his successor, announcing he himself would be stepping back to focus on his health and, for the first time, personal philanthropy. 6 months later. The crisp autumn air of Baltimore was a sharp contrast to the humid chaos of New York. Bella walked through the glass doors of the Johns Hopkins Hospital, a white coat draped over her arm. It was her first day back. It was her first day of clinical rotations. She was no longer the same person. She was no longer just a student. She was the non-profit director of one of the fastest-growing medical foundations in the country. The Marco Rossi Foundation had already, in just a few months, issued grants to 3 major research hospitals and fully funded a new, free cardiology clinic in the Bronx. Her life was a whirlwind of studying for exams and taking late-night calls with her board of directors, a board she had hand-picked, which included Dr. Lena Hansen. She walked past the trauma bay, the familiar smell of antiseptic and coffee filling her lungs. This was where she belonged. The ache in her feet was gone, replaced by a thrum of purpose. She checked her phone before heading into rounds. There was one text message. It was from an unknown encrypted number. "Just had my 6-month checkup. The new internal defibrillator is working perfectly. Doctors say I'm clear for travel. Thank you, Dr. Rossi." It wasn't signed, but it didn't need to be. Bella looked at the message from Arthur Vance. She felt a complex, unnameable emotion, a knot of residual anger, and a strange, grudging respect. He wasn't her friend. He wasn't her family. He was her consequence, and she was his. She typed a simple reply. "Good to hear, Mr. Vance. The Rossi Foundation just approved its first experimental gene therapy trial. Your investment is being put to good use." She put her phone away. She slipped her arms into the white coat, the fabric settling on her shoulders like it was always meant to be there. She took a deep breath, smiled, and pushed open the door to her patient's room. "Good morning," she said, her voice clear and confident. "My name is Isabella Rossi. I'm one of the doctors. How are you feeling today?" A story of tragedy, irony, and incredible karmic justice. Bella Rossi didn't just get her life back. She built a new one on the ruins of her past. She transformed her greatest pain into her greatest purpose, creating a legacy for her father that will save thousands of lives. Arthur Vance, the man who took everything from her, was the one who, in the end, had to give it all back. It proves that sometimes the person who seems the most invisible in the room, the waitress, the janitor, the overlooked, is the only one who holds the power to change everything. What did you think of Bella's story? Do you believe Arthur Vance truly changed, or was it just another transaction? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement really helps the channel grow. If you enjoyed this real-life drama, please hit that like button, share this video with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Thank you for listening.